On this episode of Mom Sipping Sangria,
everyone is experiencing this a little differently, even though we're all going through some of the same things.
I'm good. Let's do it.
Hello there. How are you hanging in, friend? Welcome to another episode of Mom's Sipping Sangria. I'm Sheila Walsh.
And I'm Anita Reynolds MacArthur. Self-isolation continues. And today, me from the East End, Sheila from the West End, we each are sipping on a sparkling skinny sangria. It's said to have less calories than other sangrias, but I don't know, Sheila.
Yeah, I don't know. We have no such proof because the recipe does not break caloric content down. And that's sometimes better than actually seeing what's in there. This one, as with all the sangrias we try out, can be found on our website, momssippingsangria.com. Click on recipes and feel free to send one in too if you have a nice sangria recipe. Don't forget, on our website as well, you can click on episodes to hear past episodes of Mom's Sipping Sangria, or you can listen to us on your favorite podcast listening app.
So, Sheila, how are things going over there in the West End isolation den?
Yes, that's what it feels like. You know what? It's okay. Kids are working. You know, I have Miles at the grocery store. Lila's doing her drive-through. Actually, Alice starting a job, our 12-year-old, starting a job this week. She's going to start delivering papers, but of course, physical distancing and all that. So that's okay. Hubby's still working from home. I don't know about you, but there's two things I'm noticing. I'm losing track of days because every day feels like the same day. So it's not like, oh, today is Tuesday, today is Wednesday. It's like, today's the day. And are you finding this when because we're all watching probably a bit more TV and stuff. When I'm seeing crowd scenes, I'm like, oh my God, like I almost get anxious these days watching the shows that have crowd scenes in them because we're in such this mindset now that you have to physically distance. When you're watching all these shows, I'm like, oh my God, they're all full of goodies.
When I'm watching a show and I see someone walking through a mall, and I didn't even really enjoy, shopping in malls before, but I go, oh, those were just the simple things that we just don't have right now. I'm like, I want to go into a mall.
So I can complain about how I don't want to be in here.
I want to sit in a restaurant. I want to be served by somebody and eat some yummy food that isn't my own. All these little things that we took for granted that, we're missing now. It's interesting.
Yeah, it really is. It gives us an appreciation for things in a totally different perspective. So how about you? How's life on the East End isolation front?
It's actually not going too bad, Sheila. I think we've kind of fallen into a groove. The kids are into their schoolwork. Ian has to go out every day for work. And for myself, I have a little bit of freelance keeping me busy. I lost one of my jobs, but I still have the other one that's kind of keeping me going. But there are two things that I'm going to mention that's been going on for me in the last couple of weeks. One, I've become hooked on a new TV show, and it's called Run. It runs on HBO once a week. It's only 30 minutes. It stars, I think you used to watch this show called Nurse Jackie. So
yes.
There's a young nurse that was on it. Her name is Merritt Weaver. So it stars her and a guy named Domhnall Gleeson. He is, if you ever watched Harry Potter series, he's Ron Weasley's actually oldest brother in the Harry Potter series. And he also stars in Rachel McAdams in About Time. It's such a good show. You have to give it a try. The other thing that I'm going to bring up is that I don't know about you, Sheila, but I am so sick and tired of wearing sweatpants, the same sweatpants day in, day out. And I don't have a lot of fun leggings or anything like that. So I thought, you know what? Ava and we go out for walks every single day. Let's reward ourselves a little bit and do a little bit of online shopping. So we decided to go on to Old Navy. 162 different styles to choose from. 3 options for each of these styles. Of those, you get 6 size options. So now we're looking at 2,916 options.
Are you kidding me?
Every one we clicked on was sold out. Ava ended up with 4 pairs in her basket, and I ended up with 3.
Out of 2,000.
All of that. If anyone is extra small or a double XL, Old Navy is for you for sure right now. Everything else in between are slim pickings.
That's always the case. You go to those clearance places back in the day when we could actually walk into a store and, the clearance racks, they would have the double zeros or the size 18.
Yeah. So someone is making money here. There are a lot of places that aren't, but my goodness, Old Navy, they are raking in the dough.
crazy.
So anyways, adjusting to a new life over the weekend, I'm going to start taking some online courses and, whatever, figuring things out as I go. It's just day by day.
And I think that's all we can do, right? Just live in the moment. And I think we're going to bring on an amazing guest, and she'll probably have lots of advice for that. Certainly living under each other's noses, or on the opposite end of the spectrum, being completely alone, taking its toll on people in different ways. And I've heard it referred to as a type of grieving for what used to be. So we're going to have to ask our guest about that.
Yeah, right. She'll most likely have an answer, because the longer this goes on, the more there is to adjust to. So especially when it comes to isolation, or, the dynamics of who we are constantly sharing space with. So we sent out an SOS, and we're incredibly lucky that this woman found some time to squeeze us in. Dr. Natasha Sharma is a practicing psychologist, relationship and parenting expert, and creator of the Kindness Journal and the 8-Hour Therapist.
Hello, Natasha, and welcome to Mom Sipping Sangria.
Hi, Sheila. Hi, Anita.
Natasha, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
So thank you so much for joining us. Anita, you were saying only a multitasking mother can do the schedule you have. Oh, my gosh.
Oh, I don't like multitasking, though. Just because you're good at it or proficient at it, it's actually, I find it extremely draining. And whether most people realize it or not, they will as well, because multitasking kind of sucks. Like, it's not optimizing ourselves when we do it. Sometimes it's a necessary evil, but actually we should cut it out wherever we possibly can.
I'm with you. I will stop multitasking whenever anybody wants me to. How are you managing your isolation with 2 kids and all the things you have going on? Has anyone asked how you're doing?
Absolutely. Some of my clients have even asked, which has been very interesting, because this is so new for all of us. Being an expert in the field of mental health and wellness provides some tools and benefits, no doubt. But just like everyone else, this is extremely new for us. We're feeling it out, a lot of this out, just like everyone else is, and trying to just exercise the patience and sort of self-compassion that goes with being thrust into a situation very quickly that nobody has any experience with. One day at a time, we're maintaining a positive and optimistic attitude wherever possible. And we're just trying not to do everything as a family. We're just trying to keep our stress levels as low as possible and stay as healthy as we can.
That's why we're reaching out to you today. We're going to pull up a couch and ask you to give us some tools to be in the best headspace possible during this pandemic when it comes to ourselves and the relationships that we find ourselves in 24/7. Or, like we said earlier, Anita, in some cases, just the loneliness, like there's no relationships going on.
Right. Well, maybe we can start with the term emotional fitness. And what does that mean to be emotionally fit?
Well, it's sort of a couple of parts. Number one, it's having a real full awareness of one's emotions. And that includes a good vocabulary, so a wide range of vocabulary to describe and articulate how you feel. And then the second part is really understanding how those feelings are created. And the fact is that we actually create the majority of our emotions through our opinions. So there's a lot of events and facts and situations that are happening around us in the world, the pandemic being second to none in that regard. And then we create our own inner dialogue and our own opinions about those factual events. And that's actually what creates our emotions. And then the third piece and the final piece is actually understanding whether those emotions fit the situation. So have you created an emotion that is psychologically appropriate to the outside situation in your life, or is it psychologically disproportionate? Is it an overreaction? Is it an underreaction? And when you have emotions that fit life and that serve you well, whether they're positive or negative, and you can basically continue to be stable and accomplish your goals despite those negative or positive emotions, that's what I would call emotional fitness and emotional intelligence.
So this is obviously really testing our emotional fitness, this pandemic. There's a few scenarios going on right now. We have people who are alone. We have couples who are isolating together. We have families isolating together, all up in each other's spaces. You mentioned the one common focus, no matter what the scenario, is stress reduction. Can you get into that a bit? bit more?
Yeah, everyone is experiencing this a little differently, even though we're all going through some of the same things. And I would guess that most people are feeling some form of stress. It might look a little bit different. So, for example, in my house and in many households where there are parents of small children who are still very dependent, who are very active and need engagement, the stress is going to be just juggling, being at home together and being cooped up and having very limited things to do and trying to manage, all the childcare and the household and the working and all of that. But for example, someone I spoke to last week who is an older person who's completely on their own is experiencing the stress of loneliness and really missing the social interaction. Like it's really starting to set in, is what he said. So the important thing is to reduce stress across the board, no matter what your situation is. We should be focusing on our comfort needs, our safety needs. That means ensuring our health is good. So sleeping well, eating nourishing, healthy food, getting as much exercise as is allowable given our personal situation inside or outside the home, and just trying to maintain whatever social interactions or not, if you don't need them, to stay happy as possible and as positive as you possibly can through this time. So that will look different for everybody. So for a busy household, it's going to be giving yourselves a break. It'll be, not trying to accomplish everything, which I can talk a bit more about. But for someone on their own or for couples isolating on their own together, it will be making sure that they can find a way to understand the sort of mental war that's going on in their head if they're completely on their own, that this is temporary, reminding themselves that you will be social again and be together again. And for couples, making sure their relationship is as healthy as they can make it.
So when we were originally reaching out to you and asking about talking points that were really important that we should go over, one that we loved that you mentioned was let the house be dirty and let the children be unschooled. Do tell.
This comes straight out of a lot of questions that have been posed to me about how parents and households and families can manage their households, because the toll is certainly larger on certain homes versus others, depending on how many people live in your home and what the burden of childcare and caregiver responsibilities are, what your means and income and financial situation is. We're not all equal and level in that. So these are all variables that play a huge role. And for parents who are parenting with a spouse or a partner, I can't even imagine how single parents are handling the situation right now. But I think that as a culture, we tend to place far too much pressure on ourselves to be everything, and particularly women. I think men are picking up on that as well. We just have this achieve, do it all motto. It's like a mantra that's playing at the back of our minds. This is an opportunity to break that motto and really dismantle and disrupt it and ask if it's working for us. So this urge to have the house clean and to continue working from home in the way that you would when you're physically there, and to school the kids or to close that gap that is being presented to the children at home who are no longer in school. I think most parents are certainly able to say, this is impossible. I can't do this. This is really hard. And many of them are probably already giving a lot of things up and letting the house be a little dirtier. And at this point, not, forcing themselves to complete every single aspect of what's being offered online at school, which is a tremendous effort on the part of the education system, I might add. But what's happening is the internal process in a parent's mind is where it matters the most. What are they telling themselves if they're not accomplishing and ticking off all these boxes? And I think that's where we tend to distress ourselves the most as parents and as families. We feel shame and guilt and just bad about ourselves if we're not doing it all. And I cannot tell you how many times I have heard a parent tell me how guilty and how bad they feel because they can't do it all. And that includes the house being in order and the food being on the table and the children being perfect and schooled and bathed and clean and happy and all of that. And work is completely in order. And it's just not possible on a regular day, let alone during COVID-19.
It almost sounds in a weird way that might be a little good for us in some ways, where you're validated that it's okay and the world isn't going to fall apart if you can't get it all done.
Absolutely. This is life, I've always used this phrase in my practice and in my work, let life prove you wrong for a change. Wouldn't that be something? Because we have a lot of ideas in our minds about how things are going to work, and that causes anxiety because we predict a lot of negative outcomes without actually knowing whether they'll happen. But you're right, this gives us an opportunity to see, oh yeah, even though we're going through something that's horrible, and even though what's happening is heartbreaking in terms of, if you really want to get to the black and white, what's happening around the world in terms of people's health. And it's not going to be the end of the world. It doesn't mean that there isn't going to be a lot of sadness, grief, and stress, but it's not the end of the world. And I think this is helping us to hopefully gain an opportunity to gain some of that perspective that we don't have to be that at home as well.
Right. I'm wondering, when it comes to relationships, if you are finding it very difficult with your partner or your roommate, whomever it is this a great test to indicate whether or not this just isn't going to work?
It's a hard question to give a succinct answer, in the sense that I think it's too simplistic to say that this pandemic will decide whether your relationship was a good one or a bad one. That's too simplistic, because for some people who are experiencing physical distance in their relationship, this actually may help them. I know of instances where, had the people stayed together or been stuck at home in isolation together, it probably would have been the end. So the opportunity for physical distancing has actually given them a second chance at their relationship because of that. But on the other hand, it is certainly going to present some of the biggest stresses that any two people will have, whether they're parents or whether they are not. And that might not be true for everybody, but for those who are, I think it will certainly come down to how effective the communication style and the cooperation style in that relationship was prior to this. Because in theory, it should carry over into even an unprecedented situation like this, with maybe some exceptions. So if you had a really good foundation, if you were very compatible, really excellent communication and conflict management skills, and you just really liked each other and loved each other genuinely, there's a decent chance you'll come out of this on the other side. On the other hand, if those things were not in place, which are sort of the hallmarks of a healthy relationship, this could present a real challenge.
That makes sense. Mm-hmm. And I just want to add on to that, because I know you had said with the partner, there's nobody is going to be able to read your mind. And if you need something or you're not getting something, you have to actually stand up and ask for it, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I've always thought that. Much of the advice that I've been giving during this pandemic is not really that much of a detraction from all the advice I used to give about emotional intelligence beforehand. And in a relationship, sometimes we need things like concretely that are very personal to us, whether it's a hug or whether it's for a room to be cleaned up or, what have you. And I think sometimes we are good about communicating that. And then other times we expect our partners to just know what we need. And it doesn't really matter how long we've been with our partners. Sometimes the longer we've been with them, they will know intuitively what we need. But other times it is perfectly acceptable to speak up. And I always say, don't speak up in anger, but don't sit in polite silence either. Say what you need, ask for what you need, let your partner know if you need a hug right now, if you just need to be alone right now. And yeah, that's actually part of that healthy communication, is making sure that we verbalize the things that we need and that are very important to us in a relationship. And that doesn't always happen.
These are really, really wonderful tips and advice that you're giving us here. And I think what you're talking about here will keep the overreactions that we tend to, sometimes we keep things bottled up and then they explode. So it'll help bring that down. What's your take on the saying, never go to bed angry?
Oh my gosh, that's so funny that you asked me that, actually, because I've talked about that phrase. I don't think I've spoken about it professionally, but I know when I've traveled around in the world with my family, when I used to travel, I'll travel again. I'll travel again, I'm sure. But I would see a lot of newlyweds, and they'd always ask, like, all the experienced couples around them, what's your advice? And my advice was always, get rid of that piece of advice, the one that don't go to bed angry. That's always been, I think the last time I said it was the last time I traveled in Costa Rica in January, and some newlyweds asked us, and we both looked at each other. We said, forget that, don't go to bed angry. It's so true, though.
I like you, Natasha.
Yeah. I try to keep it very real, but this is also really, it's very true, because if you think about when conflict and when we're most likely to have an argument, for anybody, not just couples, any human being is most likely to engage in conflict and argument later in the day. And the reason for that is the more tired we get, the more fatigued we get, the more our inhibitions go down in the brain, the more that the executive functioning aspect of our brains and our minds, it starts to diminish naturally. That's supposed to happen. What that means is that loosely, you start being able to control and filter. It's kind of like taking a few drinks, without having a few drinks. You're now more likely to just blurt things out. You're fatigued. Your brain is fatigued and your communication skills are fatigued. So fights are going to happen more often before that. And then if you then try and stay up until they're finished or that they're resolved, all you're doing is just carrying that fatigue over into the next day. It's actually better, whether you've had the fight at nighttime or before you're going to sleep, even from a previous day. It's okay to go to sleep if you're not able to resolve it, because sleep is much more important in the short term than resolving an argument. If the argument is a really significant one, you will pick it up the next day or shortly thereafter. If you don't, you have other problems, bigger problems in the relationship. And more often than not, if it's not a big deal, if it's just one of those petty little things that we all of us get into those, right? You're probably going to wake up the next day and not even care. And I've personally experienced that, and it's a rule that I live by. You end up going to sleep, you wake up, and it's like, what the heck were we even fighting? You won't even mention it. 99% of the time, it doesn't even come up.
You don't know me.
No. I said the petty things, the little things, like the who moved my socks thing.
You hear that advice all the time. I'm so glad you brought that up and made that very real for us.
So I'm just going to circle back a little bit. You were talking about people who are completely alone during this situation that we're going through. What tips can you offer to those who live completely alone?
I think, like for most of us, but certainly for people on their own, it could have been interesting in the beginning, time to themselves. But I think it depends on what their social lifestyle has been like. So for people who were very social and who really enjoyed, who derived a lot of energy from socializing before this, are probably feeling it big time right now. And that's understandable and normal and situational, and who could blame them? And what they need to do, those people need to do, is to really just dig down, build the resilience that this opportunity provides so that they can learn to be with or without their social needs fulfilled to their level of preference. And we're all social. We all need social interaction, but some of us need more and some of us need less. So for the people who need less, they might be experiencing a little less distress, but I'm a profound believer that there's very few people in the world that are truly sort of content with the hermit style of life. And for them, they're probably not, doing too badly right now. But the most of us are going to need that. So anything you can do to keep your social life alive, make the FaceTime calls, make the Zoom calls, organize those two-way chats and four-way chats with friends. I do it at least 3 or 4 times a week, actually. And I have one later today with a friend, and coffee at 2, Zoom. It will never replace the beauty of personal contact and physical contact. But these methods of communication, telephone, letter writing even, they have their own value, and they really do present their own way of helping us connect to our friends and our loved ones. So I encourage anyone who's on their own to do that. The other thing that they can consider, if they really want to, there's still ways to, again, this depends on whether a person's even a pet person, but if there are pet people out there and they're isolating completely on their own, you can consider adopting a small animal or something. There is actually a way to do that still during COVID-19 because of the fact that there are a lot of people alone at home. Just make sure you're up for the task now and also for the long run, because if you adopt an animal, you can't give it back, right? It's not like a sweater.
That's a great piece of advice. Actually, my kids have been sitting there saying, we could actually foster one during this time, and they're working on me. So I think that's a really good piece of advice. Are we missing anything else that people should keep in mind during this unprecedented time? Like I've heard people are experiencing a type of grief, or they're freaking out about the outcome. What's it going to look like in the future? Anything we're missing out that you want to add before we wrap things up?
I think the grief piece is so important. I'm glad you mentioned that, because people of every level are going to be experiencing that, regardless of, whether you were living at a very comfortable level of means or whether you were not. I think we're all losing something. It doesn't really matter what your stance or status in life was. We're all losing aspects of our lives, and it's okay to miss it. I went up to my office the other day, my clinic, like my physical space, to pick up mail, which is totally empty, obviously. And I'm very fortunate. I'm one of the fortunate people who gets to have significantly reduced work as a business owner, as most businesses, small and large, across the planet. But I'm so lucky that I'm able to do some of my work and engage in so many more other things that are connected to my profession. But I still went in there and picked up my mail, and I was like, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I miss my life because I used to go there much more. And I think it's okay for everybody to acknowledge that, and they should acknowledge the feeling of sadness that may once in a while come, whether it's because you're missing your prom or weddings or whatever it is that you feel sad about. Validate it. Don't push it aside. It's a normal emotion. Just don't let yourself get drowned and sucked into a vortex of that sadness, if possible. And then accept it. And then with respect to the future, the only thing that we seem to be somewhat knowledgeable about at this point is that there will be an end to this. And I use that as a philosophy for life, and I try and impart that upon people as well. Eventually, one way or another, this will pass, and it might not be comfortable. We're looking at, I think, some of the most significant discomfort that the Western world has experienced in the history of the world. And I think that's why it's probably harder for us over here on our part, where we do well, where we thrive financially and functionally. We thrive so well here. We are not as accustomed to these kinds of situations, which require that we dig down into the depths of our mental resilience and use it. So this is an opportunity to do that, and just take it day by day. Wait it out in as much comfort and as little stress as possible, and it will pass. And practice gratitude. Be grateful you're healthy. Be grateful you're alive. Be grateful your children. I'm so glad, like somebody asked me, how do you stay positive? And I said, honestly, my children are alive and they're healthy, number one. Like as a mother, and every parent out there who's listening will know, if your children are healthy and alive, it's like you feel like you could almost handle almost anything else.
It's true.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And kind of, so whatever that equivalent is for you, remind yourself of it every day, and it should help with that future aspect.
Well, Dr. Natasha Sharma, you are awesome. This has been such great advice. Thank you so much for your time. If people want to follow you or look into your services that you offer, where can they find you?
Yeah, they can find me very easily on the internet. Type in my first name and last name, everything comes up. But I'm on Instagram at Dr. Natasha Sharma. I'm on Twitter as well, and Facebook. Very easy to find me. And then, of course, my website, natashasharma.com. And nksTherapy.com is my practice, and we are 100% virtual at the moment and fully operational with online counseling. So if anyone needs to reach out for help, we are definitely still here.
That's amazing. The Kindness Journal, the 8-Hour Therapist, they're available online as well. Thank you so much. You're amazing, and you've given us some great advice. And stay safe and stay well.
Thank you so much for having me. You too as well.
Okay, Anita, time to vent or compliment, where we either raise a glass or take a pass.
Okay, well, I'm going to take my sangria, and I've got actually 2 glasses that I'm going to raise. So maybe I should go and get another sangria. But So one glass that I'm going to raise to is to one of my neighbors. We'll call her by first name, Jean. She is volunteering her time right now to make caps and masks for frontline workers. She is an extremely talented friend and neighbor of mine. She is in a band called Whiskey Mojo. She's also a very accomplished artist. You know, she oozes creativity, and she's decided to take that talent and use it towards making caps and masks. And she's got a heart of gold, and so to her, I'm also going to raise a glass.
Can I raise my glass to her too? That's amazing. People like Jean are they're just coming out of the woodwork, and it's amazing to see these people.
And the other person that I'm going to raise a glass to is my stepsister. Her name is Elsa, and she lives in Montreal. She is a nurse. She normally teaches in a classroom to other nurses, so she's been off for a little bit. She has 2 little kids, and she has decided to, throw her hat in the ring, and she's just been picked up to work at a nursing home. So our hearts are filled for her, and we just completely raise a glass to her. We love you, Elsa, and we hope that you stay safe. Thank you for your service.
Well done, Elsa. And anything you're going to take a pass at this time?
This one is not going to be related to what we're going through right now. This is something that goes back a few years now. So people may know that I have written a couple of children's books. They're Michiki series books about, 10 years ago now, I suppose. They're picture books, and I turned them into apps that ended up on iTunes. I was going into schools. I was talking to children about sharing and caring and how to get along. The first one, they were in chapters and indigo. Everything was going great. And then they asked me to write a second one, and I did. And I started noticing I wasn't getting any, residuals from the second book. So I contacted them, and they said, well, actually, you owe us money. And I'm like, what do you mean I owe you money? So apparently they were scamming, and they were completely scamming me. Anytime a book was ordered by a company, they would ship it to that store. As they shipped, they were charging me to do that. And then what they were doing was they were pretending that that store didn't want it anymore, and they would, quote unquote, ship it back to the warehouse. In shipping it back, I then owed them money again because of their service that they were giving me.
No.
So this kept going back and forth to the point that I was now losing money on it. And they were like, unless you pay us thousands of dollars, we're going to hold all of your books, which was thousands of books. We're going to hold them in the warehouse. So I have never been able to get a hold of my books. They're still stuck in their warehouse to this day.
So they're holding your books hostage. They were scamming you. Anita, that's suck-a-roos. And I'm taking the entire pitcher of sangria and pouring it over their heads. Sounds like some legal advice is needed.
Well, and that was it. We had, 3 little kids at the time, and there was just no way that I was going to be able to hire somebody to help me out in that situation. So, they've got my books. I had, I did a little bit of research and saw that they'd done this to other companies. What was happening is they were completely 100% Canadian company. And so the government gives them funding if they can prove that they have new business. So that first year that I was producing a book, I became their business. And so they were able to get their funding that way. And then they just were scammers the rest of the time.
I think it's a job for one of those consumer reporters. We're going to have to look into that for you, because that's not fair. And you know what? We talk about this often. Anita, you and I are both big believers in karma. Karma's going to get them.
Yeah, I'm definitely, going to take a pass on that particular company for what they ended up putting me through in the end of my family.
No kidding, for sure.
And so, Sheila, after that downer, what are you going to...
Let's keep on the downer side before we lift it up.
Yeah, seriously. So what are you going to take a pass at, girl?
I'm going to ask Greg, who does this post-production, to put a wah, wah, wah in here. Can you do that for us, Greg? Thank you, Elm Podcasting. There's a plug for our company. Okay. Who am I taking a pass at? You know what? I'm going to be honest. Maybe I've just had lots of sangria this week. I don't have too many things to complain about because I've been trying to focus on, what I'm grateful for. But I do notice something, and it's not just now, but it's now specifically more because I am watching more television with my family. And I don't know about you, but I'm going to make the excuse that it's where my television is situated in the house and not my hearing is going. But But so I've had closed captioning on for probably like 15 years now.
Oh, no. Okay, you and Ian would never survive. He hates closed captioning.
My family
stand it.
My family hates it too. But I because our TV backs onto the kitchen when the dishwasher's on, I can't hear anything. So it's the location of it. It's not me.
Yeah.
Anywho, they razz me all the time. So Netflix, I love Netflix. I cannot say enough good things about them. And actually, I'm going to follow up with this legitimately because I need it just to help me along with some words. But there are people who need closed captioning because they literally have, hearing. They're hearing impaired. Netflix is the only channel that has only white closed captioning, and it's not on a black background. So in other words, if their dialogue comes up over a screen that has white on the screen, you can't see the closed captioning. So it's very frustrating to watch closed captioning on Netflix. So Amazon Prime has a black box and the white script on it. And closed captioning on my TV and all the other channels, it doesn't have that. But Netflix is white, which is very difficult. So I'm going to take a pass at that, but I know that if they are made aware of it, I'm sure they would do something about it. So I am going to make them aware of that. So that's my pass.
Okay, and so what are you going to raise a glass to, Sheila?
I would feel remiss, is that the word, if I didn't always just acknowledge all the amazing people stepping up. So raise a glass to all the people stepping up, the volunteers, first responders, people who are just bringing it during the pandemic, and frontline workers, no matter what that definition is, and all sorts of different occupations. But I also want to raise a glass about things that I miss. Like you mentioned the mall, right? I miss hugs. I'm a hugger, and I miss being able to hug people. I miss waterfront walks because all those places are now closed down. I miss Winners. I used to go to Winners like twice a week. I miss Winners.
I whine about missing Winners, Marshalls, and HomeSense almost every day. The kids are just rolling their eyes. But honestly, I miss them. I really hope that they survive through all this because you can't order anything online from them.
I am too. And I used to voice the overhead announcements in there. So if you'd walk in, that would be my voice telling you to do this and this and this. So I feel like I'm actually part of that family as well, right?
Yeah.
So I miss the places that are closed. And I just want to also raise a glass to, we talk about apps and different things. I subscribe to her on YouTube. Her name is Sarah Beth, and it's Sarah Beth Yoga. And if you're looking to try it, or if you are a practicing yoga person and you can't make it to a class, I strongly raise a glass and celebrate Sarah Beth Yoga. It's free. She's amazing. So those are who I celebrate. And we also want to celebrate you, our listener. Thank you so much. And cheers to you as well. Okay, Anita, so I had to take a call. It was from my service center. My van is in there to get the winter tires taken off and the all-season tires put on. And I had to buy new all-season tires. And I just got a call from them saying, of course, there's always something additional.
There's always something.
Something has fallen apart and they have to fix it. So yeah, so the budget for the tires has now gone up substantially. Don't you love it when that happens? Anywho, seriously? That's where we're on to. It's time to break out the bizarre, and this is where Anita and I search for a really bizarre story and spring it on each other right here, right now for the first time, usually leading to the thought, seriously? So, Anita?
Seriously?
Yes.
Okay, so are you ready, Sheila?
I am ready.
The headline is, Memphis man steals date's car, goes on another date. Yeah. So, a Memphis woman says she feels betrayed after her date stole her car and then used it to go on a date with a friend of hers.
Oh, my God. We don't even really need to have any more information on that. Seriously.
Seriously. Police say a woman reported her car stolen after Kelton Griffin went to her house to take her on a date. Griffin stopped at a gas station and asked the woman to get him some cigars. A police report says while she was gone, he drove off in her Volvo. Later in the same Saturday evening, another woman contacted the victim and said that Griffin had taken her out on a date. These two were friends. So Griffin was in the driver's seat when police pulled up and arrested him and charged him with theft of property.
What is wrong with people? Like,
That's like totally seriously, is it not?
and that's something that, you'd hear that kind of a story and you're like, that's got to be made up. Somebody wrote that for a movie, and that is legit. Well,
That is legit.
that guy
It
gets...
was in the National Post.
Okay, so that's legit. National Enquirer, maybe not.
Maybe not.
Oh my gosh, that's
man.
crazy.
Okay, well, if you want to join in on anything you've heard so far, we would love to hear from you. Contact us on our website, momssippingsangria.com. Like us on Facebook or follow us on Instagram and Twitter.
We are Moms Sipping Sangria.
Sheila,
Oh, yes, Anita.
it's time to go to confession with a sangria secret where you come clean on something that you have been hiding. So, Sheila, let's hear it. It's up to you this time.
Okay, so I have... I'm trying to think. I've got one of two stories that I could share. They're both kind of funny. So if I say story number 1 or story number 2, what do you want me to go with?
Oh, the pressure. Story number 2.
Oh, okay, that's fun. Okay, so I'm going to go back years ago, my gosh, 20 years ago, maybe more. I was an entertainment reporter for a radio station in Toronto, and in that role, I got to interview some really cool people, which was really interesting. One person that I was able to interview was Gowan. Do you remember Gowan? Larry Gowan, I'm a Strange
Gowan, yes, of
Animal,
course.
Criminal Minds. I think he's
Yeah.
actually singing with Styx now, if I'm not mistaken.
His voice is still like it was, whatever, 30 years ago.
Yes.
He's amazing.
Super strong, super strong. So super nice guy. So we came into the station, did the interview, was really, really great. And at the end of the interview, when I'm wrapping it up, I went to say, well, I wish you much success. And instead I said, Gowan, I wish you much sex.
Sheila!
And I literally, I know you can see my face, but my face was like, oh, and then he looked like, huh? And I wish you much sex, and I couldn't get it out, so I kept on saying sex. It was like one of those horrible things. So he forgave me. I think I buried myself in the sand for like 2 weeks. I was so embarrassed, but I thought that was funny. And those things happen all the time. I have other stories that I can tell you, but that is my my confession for this week. Okay, so well, thank you for letting us hang out with you, and we hope you're staying well and healthy, and hopefully taking a moment here and there to breathe as well. You know, we're all kind of being forced into a bit of downtime, and as Natasha Sharma said, just go with it, because before you know it, right, Anita, life's going to be crazy and busy and noisy again, and we're going to be attempting to multitask, which we have no idea how that affects us, right?
That's right. And before we go, we'll leave you with an end quote. I have one for you this time, Sheila.
Okay.
Okay. There are men who have scaled Everest who wouldn't dare to travel with 2 kids under the age of 3.
Blake Lively.
Dax Shepard.
Oh, Dax Shepard.
Yeah, he's the actor and host of the podcast Armchair Expert, and he's married to Kristen Bell. I love him. I love that podcast, by the way, Armchair Expert.
I love that podcast too, and they're a good, fun couple. Actually, they appear on Ellen every so often. They seem to have a really cool dynamic, so that's great, and good for him recognizing that. That's for sure. Alrighty, well, that's it for now. Till next time, have a good one.
Have a good one, and don't forget to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
We are Moms Sipping Sangria. It's blooper time. Can you hear me?
I can't hear you.
Oh.
I can see you.
I can hear you. I can't see. I can see you.
I can see you, but I can't hear you.
Hello?
Oh, there she is.
Yay! Oh, my Shaggy won't hold you.
Are there zings in my voice?
There's no zings at all.
Blah, blah, blah.
Blah, 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 blah.
Yada, yada,
Blah,
yada.
blah, blah. I think we should do a whole episode where we just go, because people are listening to anything at this point, right?
We're like totally awesome.
My hair needs a haircut. Oh my God, Rob! I take back it.
Take back it. I haven't even finished my coffee yet. And it's like, we're doing pretty good, I think.
We have no one to talk to. For sponsorship opportunities, email us at momssippingsangria@gmail.com. Mom Sipping Sangria is produced by Elm Podcasting.
Cha-cha-cha. Woohoo. Hello.